Hi, I'm Ashley Smith from the Farmington Hills Nature Center, and welcome to this episode of Nature in the Hills. Today we have with us Zonia Ozog. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi Ashley, how are you?
Good, thanks. So can you share with us a little bit about what you do and why?
Well, Ashley, I'm a certified holistic health practitioner. And as a holistic health practitioner, I study and practice holistic health and alternative healing methods.
Perfect.
I studied Ayurveda, which is the science of life from India. I studied aromatherapy, herbs, and whole food nutrition. And I'm in the process of studying magnetic field therapy. As a holistic health practitioner, I focus mainly on diet and lifestyle.
Sure.
Because I believe that the human body is capable of healing itself as long as we nurture it by creating the environment it needs.
I feel like that's a really popular trend right now too, folks getting back to local organic foods and taking better care of themselves.
Yes, it is. So I help people find the answers they need and support them in making the appropriate changes.
Perfect.
My motto is back to nature, and I have 2 rules. Rule number 1, do no harm.
Right.
I help people identify what it is they're doing, failing to do, or what is in the environment that causes them harm. Rule number 2, do good. So I help them identify what it is they can do instead to return to health or maintain health.
Right. We can definitely understand that motto at the Nature Center, back to nature. That's something that we work to get people to do all the time. But what first got you interested in learning about healing herbs and spices and helping people in that way?
Well, I have been living, I grew up in Germany, so I grew up with a lot of healing methods that are not common space here. I grew up with chicken soup, I grew up with herbal teas, with homeopathy, so I was naturally interested in it. I've always been into organic foods, more so when I had a child.
Right.
And at some point in time, I decided to formally study it. And one of my homework assignments was to pick 10 herbs that I have in my kitchen cabinet and describe their medicinal value. And that's when I fell in love with herbs.
Right, learning all those interesting things. So what is the most interesting thing you think you've come across, you've discovered while learning more about Michigan herbs?
Well, if you say Michigan herbs, it reminds me of simpling. Herbalism used to be called simpling. Herbs were called simples.
Right.
Because most of them are so versatile that they can help you as long as you follow the basic rules. And one of those basic principles is use herbs that grow near you. Plants create phytochemicals to protect themselves from their environment. And so the whole idea is that they create the phytochemicals can help your body protect from the very same environment.
Right, you living in the same space and everything, and they've adapted over hundreds and thousands and even millions of years to live in that same environment. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So are there any myths or common misconceptions that people have about using herbs?
I would say there are many and a few. One of the myths is people use herbs, but they don't really know how to use them.
Sure.
For example, a tea bag has about 1 to 3 grams of herbal material in it. But for the herbs to make an impact on your health, you need to take at least 3 to 6 times the amount.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that's one of the things I teach people is how to use herbs correctly.
So even though we're drinking herbal tea, we might not be getting all the benefits from it that
you
we
might
could.
not make an impact.
Right. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So are native herbs easy to find and prepare?
Some of them are.
Right.
And you will find out a little bit later which ones are, and some of them are not easy to find. We always need to make sure that we identify them correctly.
Okay, yeah, perfect. You don't want people going out there and thinking that they know an herb and using it to put in their bodies if they're not 100% good at identifying it. Right. So speaking of that, what are some of the negative side effects or risks that people can, should be careful of when they're using herbs and spices?
Well, most herbs are safe.
Okay.
Some herbs can cause allergic reactions when people have allergies, so that needs to be cared for.
Right.
People that take medication need to be aware that herbs can have drug interactions. For example, if you take an immunosuppressant drug, but you seek echinacea for its immune enhancing properties, then that's not a good idea.
Right.
Other things that need to be considered is your state of health. For example, if you're pregnant, you need to avoid certain herbs.
Right, that makes sense for sure. So making sure you have all the information before you dive into using herbs to benefit your health for sure.
Yeah.
So folks can learn a little bit more about natural herbs and spices. We do workshops and classes. You offer them through the Farmington Hills Nature Center.
Yes,
so
I
can
do.
you So can you share a little bit with us about some of the classes that you're going to be offering this coming summer and fall and into the winter?
The first workshop coming up will be in August, and we'll be doing it at the Long Acre House in Farmington.
I'm very excited.
Yes, and its title is Herbal Tea Party. I will be teaching people the medicinal properties of about 24 mild herbs that mostly grow in Michigan.
Right.
And they will get to compose their very own herbal tea and take it home and enjoy it.
Right, right.
In September, we have another workshop that's titled Cooking and Healing with Kitchen Herbs and Spices. So people will get to learn about the medicinal and nutritional properties of herbs. I want them to use more herbs so they can actually have the benefits of it.
Right, right.
And in, when is it? In early winter, we'll start a health plant.
Yeah, our Plant Talk series.
Oh, a Plant Talk
yes,
series.
I'm excited about that.
What do we name it? Holistic Health and Plant Talk.
Yes.
It's a series of 5 weeks where I talk about health topics. The first one will be the immune system, and I will tie in the herbs that support the immune system, explain how does the system work, and what else can I do to maintain it.
Right. I think that'll be a really great series because it'll give people a really nice comprehensive look at how they can use herbs and spices.
Yes, and it will also be very interactive because people get to ask questions.
Right.
And at the end, they get to help me determine the topic for the next week.
Right.
Yeah.
And so last winter we offered your class the Cooking and Healing with Natural Herbs and Spices, even some kitchen spices. And that class went really well. So we're going to be offering that one again as well, I think early winter this year. So.
In September, I believe.
Yeah, is it September? Yeah, in the fall. So folks can look forward to that as well. So that was a great class too. So can you share with us some of the local herbs and spices that people can use? Maybe ones that they can find in their backyard or at the grocery store?
Do 2 of the kitchen herbs and spices, because you will find that the spices and herbs that Americans cook with are not local at all.
Right.
With a very few exceptions, those are all from out of the country. So let me introduce you to 2 spices that I have in my Cooking and Healing workshop. One of them is sweet basil.
Okay.
Sweet basil originated in India and has been cultivated there for over 5,000 years. It's not only very nutritious, but it also has a long history of medicinal use. And that is what I would like to teach people, that they become aware of what good an herb does for them when they start cooking with it.
So is that something, is sweet basil, does it look similar to the basil that a lot of folks might have in their garden? Does it look different?
It is the very same basil that everybody has in the yard. It's the most common type of basil that you can find in the grocery store.
Right, and I know they have all kinds of different basils now. I feel like when you go to the garden centers, they have all these
they do the
different
Thai
aromas.
basil and purple basil, and
So this is just the sweet basil, the common one that you see at the store.
And so basil is actually known as an alterative, which means it helps purify the blood.
Wow.
It aids digestion, and it also calms nerves, which makes it helpful for tension, headaches, and migraines.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, it tastes sweet and savory, and you can add it to salads. You can add it to fresh mozzarella and tomatoes, to tomato sauce. I like to use it together with parsley chopped up in olive oil to marinate my fish. It tastes sweet and savory, and it's one of my favorite herbs.
Great. So do you recommend with basil then ingesting it fresh? Is that like the best way to really get a lot of the benefits?
That is always the best way when we're talking about herbs.
Great, great. So I think with basil, that's a great one because I feel like a lot of folks can picture that in their mind right now and know exactly what it looks like when they go out to the garden. to use it. So it sounds like it has a lot of really great benefits.
Yes, and it's available at all grocery stores.
That's perfect.
So,
yeah.
yes.
Is there another kitchen spice that folks can look for?
Yes, I would like to introduce you to parsley.
Yes.
Now, most people know parsley, and there's actually two very common types of that. Well, that's the curly parsley and the Italian flat leaf parsley. Those are the two types that you usually find in a grocery store.
Like right now in our kids' garden, we have the curly parsley growing.
The curly parsley, yeah. Yeah, the flat leaf parsley, the Italian one, is less bitter.
Okay.
And the curly one tastes more robust.
Does it matter for folks which one they use? Do they have the same benefits, or are they different in that way too?
No, pretty much all the types of parsley have the same benefits.
Okay.
Medicinally, parsley improves kidney function. It aids digestion, like most herbs do. It also calms the nervous system, and it eases respiratory function. So if you have a cold, it can be very helpful.
Oh, that's interesting. I like the idea too with basil and parsley. Those are herbs that you can grow in your kitchen year-round too, so you can have access to the fresh version of both of them. And just the way you mentioned it, sounds like it's really easy to add it to meals, maybe things that you hadn't even thought of adding it to before, just kind of chopping up some fresh and adding it.
You can add it to a lot of meals. I sprinkled it over my potatoes. I put it in soup. I marinate my fish with it. You can marinate meat with it, together with other spices. It's also very nutritious. It has a high amount of folic acid, vitamin A, C, and K in it.
So what about some of the, I know a lot of folks are, especially folks that come by the Nature Center, are always asking me about wild edibles and native herbs, and sometimes they're surprised by some of the ones I recommend for them to look for when they're out on a hike. So what are some of the ones that you recommend to folks that they might be able to find in their own backyard? I
like to recommend herbs that people consider weeds.
Yes, weed's a relative term, right? What might be a weed to someone is wild edible to someone else.
Right. So one of my favorite ones is called Taraxacum officinale, and that is the common dandelion.
Right. So what are some ways that we can use dandelion? Do we just eat the leaves? Do we eat the stem and the flower? Like, what parts of the plants do we eat?
Leaves and the flower are edible.
Okay.
Mostly we use the leaves for food. You harvest them in the spring and early summer when the leaves are young. Later on they turn a little bitter. You can still eat them, but they may not taste great.
So more when they're younger, a little fresher leaves.
Yeah, and you can eat them raw, or you can saute them like spinach.
Okay.
And it's one of the most nutritious greens you can eat.
Right.
It has the highest vitamin A content of all greens.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so in essence, it's more nutritious than spinach. And spinach is actually not native. It came over from Europe as a food crop.
Right.
And it's also a different version is native to Asia. There's actually 60 different species of dandelion.
Okay. So the dandelion was brought over as a food crop.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. So now we have it all in our yards, and we think of it as a weed that we need to get rid of, but it's something that we could think of more as a harvest in the springtime. And it's not only beneficial to humans, but it's one of those plants too that's beneficial to pollinators, so it's important to keep around.
Yeah, and medicinally it supports liver function.
Okay.
It promotes waste elimination. It's known as one of the detoxifying
herbs.
So
is it like a detoxing herb?
Yeah, it's a detoxing herb.
Wow.
And it's thought to aid in stabilizing blood sugar.
Okay.
Which is a modern day disease.
Right. A huge problem for a lot of people. So that would be an interesting fact for them to know.
What most people don't know is it's very beneficial for your garden. Its large taproot brings up the nutrients to the more shallow rooted plants.
Okay.
And adds minerals and nitrogen to the soil.
Oh, interesting.
And it attracts over 90 pollinating insects.
Wow. And we think of when you're out there pulling dandelions out of your garden, a lot of us can testify that it's hard, it has a deep taproot.
It has a deep
taproot,
yes.
Speaking of pollinators, it does flower early in the season, in the spring. So a lot of those honeybees that have been overwintering and are in desperate need of food in the early spring months, dandelion is a special flower for them that they definitely look for. So it's important to keep around.
I like to caution everybody that has an allergy to ragweed, marigold, or daisies.
Okay.
They may be allergic to dandelion.
Okay, so that's a good risk for people to look out for because they might not know that they're allergic to dandelion until they try it. So it's a good tip for them, definitely. Yeah. So what are some other Michigan natives that folks can look for?
Another one of my favorites is the stinging nettle.
Okay, so a lot of people look out for that one because when it sometimes brushes against their skin, it can cause that kind of stinging, the white bumps. It's temporary, but it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So a lot of folks might be familiar with that one.
Yes, the underside of the leaves and the stem are covered in tiny hairs.
Yes.
That are filled with the same stuff that causes the pain in bee stings.
Okay, yep, it does kind of feel like that, like a little
formic acid is what I was looking for. Yeah,
okay.
It's formic acid that's in the stinging nettle.
Okay, so a great plant adaptation, right, that it has to protect itself. But what part of the plant do we actually use to ingest if it's got those stinging little hairs on
the leaves?
Okay.
Can be ingested. It needs to be either boiled or steamed to kill the sting.
So it's how you prepare it then that makes it so that you can...
Yeah, and then just like the dandelion, you can prepare it like a spinach type of dish.
Perfect. So any tips for people when they're out there collecting it so they don't get...
Wear gloves.
Yes.
It's the only way. Long sleeves, wear gloves, only collect the young leaves.
Okay, so the younger ones, a little less of the stinging property.
Well, that and then the taste is just much better.
A little bit better.
The younger leaves are better.
Okay, so how does the stinging nettle, how does it benefit us?
Stinging nettle has over 60 reported medicinal uses.
Wow.
Which is, yes, it is a lot. It builds blood. It supports a healthy prostate function. It relieves inflammatory pain.
Okay.
And it is known as an overall tonic because of its nutritional value.
Okay.
It is very high in vitamins and minerals.
Oh, interesting. So maybe that's why it has to protect itself so much because it's so very valuable to us.
Yes.
Makes it hard. Anything that's good to have is usually a little bit harder to get. So that's awesome. Is there another herb that you wanted to share with us?
I would like to share one more, and that is my absolute favorite, and that is the Echinacea purpurea, the purple cone flower.
It's got a really pretty flower.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the purple cone flower. The name is derived from the Greek word echinos, which means hedgehog, and that's in reference to the spiny center of the
seed head.
Yeah,
right.
the cone head.
Perfect. So what are some ways that echinacea benefits us? Because I know some people will even go to maybe their local health food store or vitamin store and purchase echinacea like in little capsules. So what are some reasons why we might want to use echinacea?
Echinacea is famous as an immune enhancer, and that it's its main action, and it's also a very potent anti-inflammatory.
Okay, perfect. So what part of the plant do we actually ingest?
Well, I wouldn't really ingest it unless I have it as a tea.
Okay.
You can the flower petals and the leaves are actually edible. Even though I don't think they're going to be the best tasting herb.
Right.
But it would be possible in a survival situation. But the whole plant is used in a tea form and as a supplement.
Okay.
And then you can also infuse oils with echinacea, and it's very helpful for skin conditions. I had an experience with a friend of mine who had poison ivy, and we put my echinacea oil on it, and by the end of the night, the rash was almost gone.
Amazing. Wow.
So it is very potent.
Yeah. Another thing I like about the couple of the native herbs that you mentioned is most of them are pretty easy to identify. The echinacea for sure. A lot of people might know that one just from seeing it in their gardens or gardens that other folks have. And then the dandelion, it's hard for us to, not know what a dandelion looks like. A lot of us know that. And even stinging nettle, it can be a little bit inconspicuous, but once you've seen it, it's pretty easy to find,
Well, stinging nettle actually has a lot of lookalikes that are not stinging nettle, and you can tell because they don't sting.
That's true. You don't want to test it though. But I think it's important to say, making sure that you practice your ID, that you know the plants well before you use them, just like you mentioned before. But I also think it's interesting that you said that a lot of those plants have other benefits to nature not just to humans, so pollinators, birds, echinacea. We see a lot of times the goldfinch will come down and use the seeds and everything from the seed head. So
and it attracts butterflies.
Yep.
The monarch frequents the echinacea plant.
yeah, the pollinators, the swallowtail butterflies too, I see a lot of times on the echinacea plants. So there's so many reasons to plant them in your yard and to have a little space for native flowers and herbs and things like that. So not just for us, but for nature too. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this episode of Nature in the Hills. For more information about our upcoming herb and spices workshops, please call the Nature Center.